The emergency beacon flashes red across the human medical sector, its urgent signal overriding every other transmission. Dr. Elias Voss frowns at the display, his hands still covered in synthetic blood from his last surgery. Priority distress, called Alien Empire, Ray situation possibly dangerous. But the details are encrypted, which is even stranger. Governments usually don't hide medical emergencies. Unless they involve someone important, he wipes his hands on a cloth and activates the message. The hologram that appears is grainy, but the voice is deep and commanding. This is King Zorvac of the Valith Empire. Our healers have failed. My daughter is dying. Human, you are summoned. A set of coordinates. Follows no time for questions, no explanation, just an order. Elias exhales, rubbing his temple. The Valiths are one of the most advanced alien species in the known galaxy. They possess medical technologies beyond human understanding. If they can't save her, what makes them think he can? But refusing a royal command is not an option, especially when the message implies that his presence isn't a request. Before he can decide what to do, a violent pulse shakes the entire room. Light engulfs him. The unmistakable pull of a teleportation field takes hold. His stomach flips, and then darkness shifts into a breathtaking sight. Towering spires of organic metal stretch toward the violet sky, their surfaces pulsing with veins of luminous energy. Below, glowing rivers snake through a city that breathes like a living entity. He barely has time to process any of it before he is shoved forward, rough alien hands gripping his arms. The guards, towering and clad in black armor, move him through the palace, holes, their faces hidden behind reflective visors. No one speaks. The air is thick with tension. Elias is used to operating under pressure, but this feels different. There is no trust here, only expectation and threat. They push him through a massive set of doors. The throne room is vast, its walls lined with enormous bioluminescent pillars, casting eerie light on the gathered nobles, their elongated forms draped in flowing metallic fabrics. Their eyes, a dozen different shades of gold, green, and violet, all fixed on him. But none more intense than the 6 burning eyes of the figure on the throne, King Zorvac. Immense, powerful, radiating an authority that presses down like a physical weight. Beside him, on an ornate floating platform, lies the princess. Her silver skin has faded to a dull gray, her twin hearts sluggish. In her exposed chest, translucent membranes covering them flutter weakly. She is dying. Elias straightens his shoulders. Decades of training override his instinct to freeze. His voice comes out steady. Bring me her medical records, her vitals. I need to know what you've tried. A sharp murmur ripples through the court. The king's gaze narrows. One of the nobles steps forward, disbelief in his voice. You demand. Before you act human, do you not understand the stakes? Elias meets his gaze, unflinching. The stakes. Oh, I need to know what's killing her. If you want me to save her, let me work. Silence stretches thick and heavy. Then the king raises a massive clawed hand and gestures. Proceed, doctor, you have one chance. Fail, and you will not leave this place alive. Elias barely acknowledges the threat because he is already moving his mind, shifting into work mode, his hands moving instinctively as he reaches for his portable scanner strapped to his belt. The alien medical attendants hesitate, but a sharp command from the king forces them to step back, clearing a path to the floating medical platform where the princess lies, her breathing shallow, her twin hearts flickering beneath her translucent skin. Every second counts. But he forces himself to focus, analyzing her vitals with rapid precision. The scanner whirs, displaying streams of data in a mixture of human and alien symbols. Elias' eyes narrow as he filters through the information. Her nervous system is in overdrive, her immune response failing despite the aggressive treatments already applied. Her blood thickened by some unknown factor. It is almost as if her body is attacking itself, but not in the way an autoimmune disorder would. He crossed references with the known database of Valith physiology, trying to find a match, but nothing makes sense. She should be responding to the treatments, yet she is getting worse. He glances up at the medical attendants. Your medicines, what are they based on? What compounds do you use? One of the attendants steps forward, his expression both skeptical and resentful. The most advanced bioadaptive serums in the Empire. They have saved millions. But the human doctor shakes his head. No, not this time. Her body is rejecting them, not because they are failing, but because they are being treated like an invading disease. Something in her system is seeing your medicine as a threat, which means the more you give her, the worse she gets. Another ripple of murmurs spreads through the court. The king leans forward, his massive form casting a long shadow over Elias. Then what will you do, human? What can your primitive science accomplish where ours has failed? Elias ignores the insult, his mind already racing through possibilities. He has seen similar reactions in human patients when their immune systems overreact to foreign treatments in cases of extreme allergic response or genetic incompatibility. But this is beyond anything he has encountered before, yet the principle remains the same. If her body is rejecting treatment, he needs to trick it into accepting one. The answer is obvious and reckless: gene therapy. He glances at the king, straightening his posture to hide the gnawing pit of doubt in his stomach. I need access to your genetic records, all historical medical data on your royal bloodline, and I need it now. The nobles erupt, outrage flashing through their luminous eyes. A lesser noble with dark silver skin steps forward, his voice dripping with disdain. You dare request access to the sacred lineage archives? Human, the king's own healers are not even permitted to view such records. Elias grits his teeth, resisting the urge to snap back. He does not have time for their arrogance. But the king raises a clawed hand, silencing the room, his 6 eyes locked onto Elias, his expression unreadable. You claim my daughter's blood is rejecting its own medicine, and you believe this knowledge will save her. Yes, Elias says without hesitation. If I can identify the exact genetic markers causing the reaction, I can modify the treatment to work with her system instead of against it. The king stares at him for a long moment, then finally speaks. You have until her heart stops. If she dies, you die too. The attendants bow and rush to retrieve the data. Elias exhales, knowing he is running out of time. The moment the attendants rush away, Elias turns back to the princess, scanning her again, his mind racing. The data he has is incomplete, but he already suspects what is happening. Her cells are reacting as if the medicine is a pathogen, mutating too fast for her immune system to compensate. It is almost as if something inside her is rewriting itself faster than her body can keep up, and whatever is causing it is deeply embedded in her genetic code. He needs that historical data, but he also needs to act now if he wants to keep her alive long enough to use it. He looks up at the alien medics, standing stiffly behind him, their faces unreadable, but their resentment clear. He knows they do not trust him, and some may even want him to fail, but he does not have time for politics. You said you used bioadaptive serums. Do you have a way to slow cellular mutation, something that suppresses rapid genetic shifts, a temporary stabilizer? Even if it does not cure her, it will buy me time. One of the attendants, a younger one, hesitates, glancing nervously at the others, then nods slowly. We have a suspension formula used for experimental treatments, but it has never been tested on the royal bloodline. Elias gestures sharply. Bring it to me now. The attendant hesitates again, but another glance from the king sends him running toward a nearby console, entering commands with swift precision. A mechanical panel slides open, revealing a crystalline vial of shimmering blue liquid. Elias reaches for it, but before he can take it, a sharp sound cuts through the room. A metallic clink against the floor, a soft hum of energy building. Something is wrong. His instincts, honed by years of working in high-risk environments, scream at him to move. He does not think, just reacts, twisting his body at the last second as a thin blade of dark metal whistles through the air, slicing past his shoulder. Instead of plunging into his back, he stumbles forward, catching himself against the princess's medical platform, his breath sharp and ragged as he turns to see his attacker. A figure clad in dark robes stands at the far side of the chamber, their face obscured, but their stance unmistakable. They are a trained killer. The nobles erupt in gasps and shouts, but Elias barely hears them. He sees only the glint of the second blade being drawn, the assassin lunging toward him again. Elias is unarmed, but he has something better: knowledge. In the split second before the next strike, he calculates everything: the angle of the attack, the physiology of the Valith. He had studied their anatomical charts on the way here. He knows that their secondary lung sits higher than a human's, that their reaction time is superior, but their balance is dependent on their elongated limbs. Elias twists at the last moment, grabbing the assassin's wrist, and slamming his elbow into the exact nerve cluster that controls their equilibrium, the assassin stumbles, their grip loosening just enough for him to wrench the blade free and spin it back against their own throat. For a long second, no one moves. The nobles, frozen in shock, the guards tensed. But motionless, waiting for the king's command, Elias, breathing hard, does not lower the blade. His voice comes out calm but cold. Someone sent this assassin to kill me, and they did not want me to save the princess. So tell me, your majesty, do you want her to live, or do you want her to die? Because someone in this room has already made that decision for you. For a long moment, the throne room is silent. The only sound is the faint hum of the assassin's blade, still trembling in Elias's grip. The nobles are frozen, their luminous eyes flicking between him, the assassin, and the king. The guards remain still, waiting for a command. But the tension in their stance tells Elias they were not expecting this either. The assassin struggles against his grip, but he tightens his hold, pressing the edge of the weapon just enough to make his point, not enough to kill, but enough to warn. Then the king moves, his 6 eyes narrowing, his massive clawed hand slowly rising, and then with a flick of his fingers the guards spring into action. Faster than Elias can react, they seize the assassin, ripping them from his grasp and forcing them to their knees. The king stands, his towering form casting a long shadow over the room, his voice like rolling thunder. Explain yourself, he growls, his gaze locked on the assassin. The robed figure remains silent, the head bowed, but the king is not one to be ignored. In an instant, he moves faster than Elias thought possible, closing the distance and seizing the assassin by the throat, lifting them effortlessly from the floor, his claws tightening around their windpipe. You sought to kill the only one who can save my daughter, he snarls. The nobles murmur uneasily, some shifting, as if they already know the answer. Elias watches closely, analyzing every reaction, looking for the one who seems too still, too unconcerned, the one who gave the order. The assassin gasps, their hands clawing at the king's grip, but still they refuse to speak. Elias steps forward, risking the king's wrath. Your majesty, I need your daughter stabilized, or she will not survive another hour. I cannot waste time on this interrogation. Let your guards handle it, or she dies. The king's 6 eyes shift toward Elias, assessing. Then, with a sharp exhale, he tosses the assassin aside. They hit the ground hard, and the guards drag them away, vanishing through a side corridor. Elias does not wait for permission. He turns back to the medical platform, the vial of stabilizer. Still waiting, he snatches it up, scanning its contents rapidly, its molecular structure shifting under his analysis. Designed for genetic suspension, but untested on the royal bloodline, he does not have time for certainty, only action. He injects the serum directly into the princess's main artery. The effect is almost immediate. Her breathing stabilizes, the erratic pulses in her twin hearts, slowing the violent cellular mutations in her bloodstream, visibly lessening. But it is not enough. This is a temporary fix, a desperate attempt to buy time. If he cannot find the source of the mutation, she will relapse. And next time there may be no saving her. He turns back to the attendants. Where are the genetic records? I need them now. A console flickers to life across the chamber, data streaming in ancient medical logs, detailing generations of the royal bloodline. Elias moves quickly, scanning the records, but then he freezes, his heart hammering in his chest. Buried deep in the oldest files, hidden beneath layers of encryption, he finds it, a genetic modification done centuries ago, something meant to enhance the royal lineage, an artificial gene sequence, dormant for generations, now suddenly active. He turns sharply, his voice urgent. Your majesty, someone activated an ancient modification in your daughter's DNA, something your ancestors buried long ago, and if I do not shut it down, it will kill her. But I need your absolute trust, because to do it, I must rewrite part of her genetic code, and that means changing who she is. The moment the words leave Elias's mouth, the throne room erupts. Nobles gasp, attendants exchange horrified glances, voices rise in protest and disbelief. The air thrums with tension, but Elias does not waver, his gaze locked on the king, who remains silent, his 6 eyes fixed on the human doctor, unreadable. Blasphemy! A noble with gleaming obsidian skin steps forward, her voice sharp with outrage. To alter the genetic code of the royal bloodline is forbidden. It is a violation of our sacred lineage. To change the princess is to defy the will of our ancestors. Elias barely spares her a glance. His focus remains on the king. If I do not alter it, she will die. I do not care about traditions or ancestors. I care about keeping your daughter alive. If that means breaking some ancient rule, then so be it. Or would you rather bury her in honor instead of saving her in defiance? A growl ripples through the room, but Elias does not flinch. He has spent too many years in operating rooms where seconds determine life or death. To be intimidated by alien politics, he does not have time for their outrage or their fear. Every moment wasted is another step closer to the princess's death. The king's clawed fingers tighten against the armrest of his throne, his jaw working. As if grinding stone, his gaze flickers to his daughter, then back to Elias. His voice, when he speaks, is slow, deliberate. Tell me, human, if you do this, if you rewrite a part of her, will she remain my daughter, or will she become something else? Elias exhales, steadying himself before answering her mind. Her memories have essence, will not change. I am not replacing her. I am shutting down a genetic sequence that was never meant to be active. It was locked away for a reason, and now it is killing her. I can deactivate it. But if I wait too long, her body will pass the point of no return. The stabilizer I injected her with will only last a short while. After that, she will not survive. The nobles murmur, some glancing between each others, glaring at Elias with pure contempt. But it is not their decision to make, it is the king's. And in the end, the only thing that matters is whether he values tradition more than his daughter's life. The silence stretches thick and heavy, then finally the king speaks to it. Elias does not waste time. He moves swiftly toward the medical platform, already recalibrating his equipment. He pulls up the genetic sequencing interface, inputting the ancient code. The modification is complex, unlike anything human science has developed, but he can see the pattern, the cascading failure, causing her cells to spiral out of control. He isolates it, prepares a sequence override, then hesitates for only a breath. If he gets this wrong, there is no undoing it. He presses the command, the machine hums, the gene therapy floods her system. For a long moment, nothing happens, then her body convulses, alarms blare, her twin hearts falter, her breathing shudders. The nobles cry out in panic, but Elias does not move. He watches, waits, hoping, praying. Then the readings stabilize, her skin regains its luminous sheen, her breathing evens, her hearts resume their steady rhythm. The princess opens her eyes. A collective gasp ripples through the throne room as the princess's eyes flutter open, her irises shimmering like liquid silver before settling into their natural deep violet, her breathing steady, her twin hearts no longer erratic, the luminous veins across her skin no longer pulsing with unstable energy. She blinks slowly, her gaze unfocused, before locking onto Elias, confusion flickering across her face. The king moves first, his massive form closing the distance in a single stride, his 6 eyes scanning his daughter for any sign of change, any trace that she is no longer who she was. He reaches out, a clawed hand, hesitant, as if afraid to touch her, as if afraid she might dissolve into something unrecognizable. But when she lifts a trembling hand to grasp his tension breaks. Father, her voice is hoarse, but unmistakably hers. A shuddering exhale escapes the king, and the weight of the moment crashes over the room. The nobles remain silent, some in awe, some in disbelief, some still furious that their sacred traditions were defied, but none dare to speak against what they have just witnessed. The human doctor did what the most advanced healers could not. He saved the princess, and in doing so he has altered the course of their empire. Elias does not bask in their amazement. He is already running another scan, checking for any lingering instability, ensuring that the gene therapy has taken hold correctly. He expected complications, cellular resistance, perhaps even neurological disruptions. But the readings are clear. She is stable, no more uncontrolled mutations, no more genetic deterioration. The princess turns her gaze to Elias, truly seeing him for the first time. You saved me. Elias exhales, shaking his head slightly. I did my job, but someone wanted to make sure I never got the chance. He turns sharply toward the king, his expression hard. Your Majesty, that assassin was not here for me. They were here to make sure she died. Someone in this court knew about the hidden genetic sequence. They knew it would kill her, and they wanted it to happen. Murmurs rise among the nobles, some shifting uneasily, others narrowing their eyes in suspicion. The king straightens his towering form, radiating barely contained fury. His gaze sweeps across the gathered court, and when he speaks his voice is dangerously low. Whoever is responsible would answer for their betrayal. Elias wipes sweat from his brow, exhaustion setting in, but he is not finished yet. If someone activated the genetic sequence, they must have had access to the deepest levels of your medical archives. That means this was not just an assassination attempt. This was a long-term plan. Someone wanted to erase the princess, but why? The princess presses a hand against her temple, as if trying to recall something, then her eyes widen, her gaze snapping to her father. Before I collapsed, I overheard a conversation, a voice speaking in the shadows. They spoke of bloodlines, of a prophecy, and of a throne that must never be claimed. Silence. The king's expression darkens, his claws flexing against the armrest of his throne. Then, in a voice heavy with unshakable authority, he turns to his guards. Seal the palace. No one leaves until we uncover the traitor. The throne room erupts into chaos. Guards move swiftly, sealing the towering doors. With a low, resonant hum, energy barriers flicker to life, locking every noble, every attendant, and every official within the grand chamber. None will leave until the king has his answers. Murmurs of fear and outrage ripple through the court, but none dare challenge the decree, not after witnessing the princess's near death and miraculous recovery. Elias exhales, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. Exhaustion gnaws at him, but he cannot stop now. The pieces are falling into place, and he needs to understand why someone would go to such lengths to eliminate the princess. He turns to her, still monitoring her vitals, but her expression is sharper now, more alert. She is no longer just a patient, she is a survivor and a witness. The king's voice rumbles through the chamber, his massive form radiating fury. No one speaks until I command it. He turns his piercing gaze to his daughter. You heard their words, bloodlines, prophecy. What throne must never be claimed? Speak, child, tell me everything. The princess presses a hand to her temple, searching through the haze of fragmented memory. It was faint, almost like a whisper. She says, her voice steadier now, but clear with purpose. They spoke of an ancient order, one that has existed since the dawn of our empire. Their purpose, to ensure that no ruler with forbidden blood ascends the throne. Forbidden blood. Elias frowns. That genetic modification I reversed, was it something your ancestors feared, something that could change the future of your empire? The nobles shift uneasily, some exchanging wary glances, others stiffening, as if they already know the answer. But it is the king who finally speaks, his voice grave. Long ago, there was a division in our people, a schism between those who believed in the purity of our lineage and those who sought to evolve through genetic advancement. The latter group sought to alter our royal bloodline, to create a ruler who could transcend our limits, but their experiments were condemned, erased from history, and their knowledge buried. The princess should not have had such a sequence within her. It should have been purged generations ago. Elias crosses his arms, and someone in your court knew it was still there, and they wanted it activated to kill her, or perhaps to prevent her from becoming something more. A low growl builds in the king's throat, his claws flexing against the armrest of his throne. Then his voice cuts through the room. One of you knows the truth, one of you conspired to end my daughter's life. Reveal yourself now, or face the wrath of the empire. Silence. Then a slow, deliberate voice rises from the back of the chamber. No one conspired against your daughter, your majesty. We only sought to preserve what must never be undone. The crowd parts, revealing an elder noble, his robes adorned with the insignia of the High Council, his gaze calm, but his stance defiant. The bloodline must remain pure, the prophecy must be upheld, the empire must not fall. The king's eyes blaze with fury. Traitor, he roars. Elias watches carefully. Something tells him this is far from over. The chamber is deathly silent as the elder noble steps forward, his robes flowing like liquid shadow across the polished floor. His expression is unreadable, his gaze locked on the king, but Elias sees no fear in his stance, only conviction. The bloodline must remain pure, the elder repeats, his voice steady, unwavering. The prophecy speaks of a ruler who will break the cycle, who will reshape the empire in ways we cannot control. Your daughter carries the remnants of a forbidden past, the same past that nearly tore our civilization apart. We could not allow that power to awaken. The king's claws flex against the armrest of his throne, his muscles tensing with barely contained rage. "You would have let my daughter die, you would have erased her from existence for the sake of an ancient superstition." Not superstition, the elder counters, his eyes narrowing. "History, our people were not meant to be altered, our evolution was meant to be natural. When the ancients attempted to change our destiny, it led to war, to devastation, and to a division that nearly destroyed us. We swore that no ruler would ever rise with that tainted blood. We swore to prevent another calamity." Elias steps forward, his voice cutting through the tension. "You talk about destiny, but all I see is a coward, afraid of change, afraid of something you do not understand. You think you are protecting your people, but all you have done is try to murder an innocent girl because of something that may never happen." The elder turns his gaze to Elias, his expression cold. "You do not understand human. You see only the individual, not the empire we have ruled for thousands of years, without chaos, without the mistakes of the past resurfacing the moment. The princess's bloodline was altered. She became a threat to everything we have built." A threat, Elias snaps, or an opportunity. "You do not know what she had become. You only fear what she might be. And instead of guiding her, instead of preparing her, you tried to erase her before she even had the chance to choose her own path." The king rises from his throne, towering over the chamber, his massive form radiating fury. Enough silence. His voice is like a storm breaking through the tension. "My daughter is alive because this human refused to let her die." He looks at the elder, his 6 eyes burning with unrelenting fire. "And because of that, I now see the truth. You would have killed my only child for the sake of an old fear. You betrayed your own ruler, and for that you will face judgment." The elder does not flinch, his expression remains unreadable. "I do not regret my actions, Your Majesty. The empire must endure, even if I must fall." "Guards," the king bellows, "seize him." The royal guards move without hesitation, surrounding the elder, their weapons raised. But he does not resist, he merely exhales slowly, as if he had expected this all along. Elias watches closely, his instincts screaming that something is not right. The elder is too calm, too accepting of his fate. And then he notices the faintest flicker of movement beneath the noble's sleeve, a concealed device. "Move," Elias shouts, but it is too late. A pulse of energy erupts from the elder's wrist, sending a shockwave through the room. The guards closest to him are thrown back, weapons clattering against the floor. Nobles cry out in panic, and before anyone can react, the elder moves within human speed, lunging toward the princess. His hand reaches for her throat, his fingers closing, but before he can make contact, the king moves faster than Elias thought possible, his massive clawed hand lashing out, catching the elder mid-stride and slamming him into the ground with bone-crushing force. The chamber echoes with the impact. The elder gasps, blood spilling from his lips, but he still manages a weak smile. "You cannot stop what has already begun, Your Majesty. The prophecy is in motion." Then his body convulses, a final surge of energy crackling through his veins before he goes completely still, lifeless. Elias breathes heavily, his mind racing. What did he mean? What prophecy is still in motion? He turns to the princess, who stands frozen, her eyes wide with something deeper than fear, understanding. The king stares down at the elder's lifeless form, his expression unreadable. Then he looks up at his daughter, his voice heavy with something Elias cannot quite name. "My child, what have they done to you?" The princess does not answer. She merely places a hand over her heart, where her twin pulses beat in perfect harmony, stronger than ever before. The silence in the throne room is heavy, the air thick with unspoken fear. The elder's lifeless body sprawled across the polished floor, his final words lingering like a shadow over them. "All you cannot stop what has already begun." The king exhales, his massive frames still trembling from the surge of fury that had driven him to act, his 6 eyes now fixed on his daughter. But there is something in his gaze that was not there before: hesitation, uncertainty. "My child," he says slowly, carefully, "what have they done to you?" The princess does not answer right away, her fingers pressing against her chest, where her twin hearts beat with a newfound strength, her luminous skin pulsing faintly, as if something within her is awakening, something old, something powerful. Elias steps forward, his medical scanner already in hand, running a rapid analysis, his eyes narrowing as the data streams across the display. Her genetic sequence is stable, there is no sign of relapse, but her energy levels have increased significantly beyond anything I recorded before. She looks up at him, her violet eyes sharp but distant, as if she is hearing something beyond their understanding. I can feel it, she whispers. Something has changed, something is different. The king clenches his fists, his gaze darkening. Explain. She closes her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. Then when she speaks, her voice is steady, but layered with something new, as if two voices now resonate within her. There was more to the modification than we knew. It was not just a mutation, it was a key locked away for generations, waiting to be awakened. Elias defends a key to what? The princess opens her eyes, and they glow faintly with an inner light, her expression unreadable to everything. Murmurs ripple through the nobles, some taking cautious steps back, others falling to their knees as if in reverence. The prophecy the elder spoke of is real. One of them breathes the return of the one who will break the cycle. The king snarls, enough of this prophecy nonsense. My daughter is not some harbinger of doom, she is my heir, and she will rule as she was meant to rule. He turns sharply to Elias. Tell me, can this be undone? Can you reverse whatever has awakened in her? Elias hesitates, scanning the readings again, his mind racing. The truth is he does not know the modification he deactivated should have ended the mutations, but something deeper, something ancient, had been lying dormant within her, waiting, and now it has surfaced. No, he finally says, I don't think this can be undone. This was always a part of her, it was only hidden. The king's expression hardens, but before he can speak, the princess steps forward, her gaze locked onto her father, no hesitation in her stance, no fear. I am still me, I am still your daughter, she says, but I am more now, I understand things I never could before. I see the fractures in our empire, the divisions, the corruption. I know why they feared me, they knew I would change everything. The chamber is deathly silent, the nobles staring in awe, in terror, in uncertainty. Elias watches the princess carefully, his instincts screaming that this is a turning point, the moment where everything shifts. He does not know what she has become, what she will become, but he knows one thing: she is no longer just the king's daughter. She is something more, something the universe has not seen before. Then she turns to him, her expression softer. Thank you, Elias, you saved me in more ways than one. Elias exhales, shaking his head. I just did what was right. The king steps forward, towering over them, both his 6 eyes searching his daughter's face. Then after a long pause, his shoulders relax, his stance shifting from that of a ruler to that of a father. Then rule wisely, my daughter, for the fate of our empire now rests with you. And the throne room erupts into a new kind of silence, the silence of a world that has changed forever.